and doers. We work to create moral transformation in our beloved community, with more justice and more love in our own lives and around the world. So whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are oh so welcome here. If this is your first time with us, you are especially welcome. Is anyone here for the first time? Well, I look forward to talking to you afterwards. And for any newcomers, we have information outside at the visitors table in the lobby and anytime online at the MLUC webpage. And everyone is welcome to join us after the service for our live coffee hour outside. With Zoom and other virtual connections, we've had a lot of activities continuing through the summer. But now, with the start of a new church year and the arrival of our new minister, Reverend David Messner, there will be a lot more going on. So check out our webpage, our weekly e-notes, and the monthly What's Happening newsletter for the latest, or you'll never know what you're missing. Now, please join us in reciting the MLUC mission. Together, we transform lives through love, service, and our welcoming faith. And now this morning's worship associate, Dave Hunter.
Good morning. I think I'll work without the stool. And of course, my notes are all mixed up, so this will take a second. This morning, Priscilla Osgood has volunteered to help light our chalice. If you come forward for me, Priscilla is a marvelous gardener, spends lots of time here at the church, also tending her own, and is one of my best friends. So this is great that you'll do this. The chalice lighting today, Building the Possible, is written by Scott Taylor and inspired by and with the use of the words of John Shore. May this flame cast its light toward the coming days. Remind us that the future is not simply a place we are going, but a place we are creating. The path of new possibilities will not be found, but made. A new world is waiting to be built. May our time together light the way. Thank you, Priscilla. Today, we are very pleased to have Lori Rogers with us, who will be doing all sorts of hard work, including our prelude, September Song by Kurt Weill. Thank you, Lori. And community is of such importance. We gather here today to share our gifts of caring and compassion as we worship in this sanctuary as a family, as good friends, and as a loving community. Let our worship together offer us peace. Our time for all ages today will offer the story Our House by Michael Rosen, read by Alan Scholl.
Was illustrated by Bob Graham. George was in the house. "This house is mine, and no one else is coming in," George said. "It is not your house, George," said Lindy. "It belongs to everybody." "No, it doesn't," said George. "This house is all for me." Lindy and Marley went for a walk over to the swings. "It's not George's house, is it?" said Lindy. "Of course it isn't," said Marley. Lindy and Marley looked in the window. "It's not your house, George, and we're coming in." "Oh, no, you're not," said George. "This house isn't for girls." Freddie was walking past with Rabbity. "I've come to put Rabbity to bed," said Freddie. "You can't," said George. "This house isn't for small people like you." Freddie took Rabbity for a ride in the car. Charlene and Marlene fixed the front wheel. "George won't let me and Rabbity in the house," said Freddie. Charlene and Marlene, Freddie and Rabbity headed straight for the house. "Stop right there," said George. "We're coming in to fix the fridge," said Charlene and Marlene. "Oh, no, you're not," said George. "This house isn't for twins." Luther's jumbo jet landed in the house. He went to get it. "Where do you think you're going?" said George. "Flight 505 has crashed," said Luther, "and I'm coming in for the rescue. Fire, fire, wee-hoo, wee-hoo, wee-hoo." "You're not coming in here," said George. Luther radioed for help. "Calling Dr. Sophie, calling Dr. Sophie." "Can I help you?" said Sophie. "We can't get at the plane, Doctor," said Luther. "Leave it to me," said Sophie. Sophie and Luther pushed through the crowd. "Make way for the doctor," said Luther. "We're coming in," said Sophie. "Oh, no, you're not," said George. "This house isn't for people with glasses." Rashida had a plan. "I'm going to tunnel in." She poked her head under the house. "Go away," said George. "This is my house." "Well, this is my tunnel," said Rashida. "We'll tunnel somewhere else," said George. "This house isn't for people who like tunnels." It was getting very noisy around the house now, and hot, and George wanted to go to the bathroom. "I'm going to leave my house now," said George, "and no one can go in it when I'm gone." George went to the bathroom. Lindy, Marley, Freddie, Rabbity, Marlene, Charlene, Luther, Sophie, and Rashida went straight into the house. George came back. There was no room for George. "This house isn't for people with red hair," said Charlene. George started to shout. George started to cry. George started to stamp his feet and kick the wall. But then he stopped. He looked. "This house is for people with red hair," said George, "and for girls and small people and twins and for people who wear glasses and like tunnels." "Because," shouted Lindy, Marley, Freddie, Marlene, Charlene, Luther, Sophie, and Rashida, "this house is for everyone."
Our offering outreach recipient for September is the Bryson Institute of the Attic Youth Center. The center serves the Philadelphia area, offering services and support programs for LGBTQ youths. The center creates opportunities for youths to develop into healthy, independent, and minded adults with a safe and supported community. Its aim is to promote the acceptance of LGBTQ youths into society. The center provides support services and community-based sensitivity training. A representative will be with us next week to fully explain and share their mission. Please give generously to this worthy organization. If you're here, the ushers may come forward. If you are virtual, instructions are already on the screen. Our offertory music is the prelude to Part 3, Chichester Psalms by Leonard Bernstein, again performed by Laurie Rogers. In communities which rely on each other, we share our joys and sorrows, expecting them to be heard and supported. Candles of Community is our ritual of personal sharing and support. After each candle is lit, you are welcome to join me in saying, "We hold you in our hearts." As we have been accustomed to doing, sadly, we light this first candle of remembrance, concern, and support for all those affected by this COVID virus. For me, and I've shared this with friends who agree, I find this return of the Delta virus and return of restrictions so much more difficult than we first started. I wish us the best. Allow this candle to remind us that we are in a time when we truly need each other's understanding, patience, and support. Let us all keep each other in our hearts. We light a candle of concern and support for all those harmed by the recent storm, to the millions of good people from the Gulf through New York and into New England. For all these millions of people, they're battered by Ida, we hold you in our hearts. I'd like to offer for a moment that we're holding a candle in next week after my discussion with Marilee Marshall, who has Rick in the hospital knee replacement. We were hoping to say he's recovering. He's had complications, he's still in. We're hoping for the best. Marley also offered that she had a computer hack which affected her personal data, her credit cards. She's having a tough time. So while we're not, let's light a candle for Marilee. Next week we can light a candle for Rick, as both are getting better. And Marilee, we hold you in our hearts. We light a candle of sorrow for Sarithra Rigg, a member for 15 years, who died this week on hospice at her daughter's home, Peggy Lee Clark. To Peggy Lee and all of the Rigg family, know that you have the church's support. Our best wishes as we hold you in our heart. We light a candle of sorrow for Kelly Nastasi's mother-in-law, who passed away this week. Kelly has been a member of our church for some years, and we offer the same compassion and caring and support from our church. As for Kelly and her family, we hold you in our hearts. We have a candle of joy and support for Bob Crane's grandchildren, Nell, 1, and Lily, 3, who are participating in a Pfizer COVID study in Finland. They had their second shot and blood test just this past Friday. Way to go, Nell and Lily. Congratulations to the family as we hold you in our heart. And for joys and sorrows too deep to voice, we light a candle. Our reading today, and thank you, Eileen. Our reading today is by Ralph Waldo Emerson. This is my wish for you. Comfort on difficult days. Smiles when sadness intrudes. Rainbows to follow the clouds. Laughter to kiss your lips. Sunsets to warm your heart. Hugs when spirits sag. Beauty for your eyes to see. Friendships to brighten your being. Faith so that you can believe. Confidence when you doubt. Courage to know yourself. Patience to accept the truth. And love to complete your life. Let's just take a brief moment to reflect on Mr. Emerson's words. Amen. As a special musical treat, Gloria will again offer us, Be Thou My Vision. Reimagining the Beloved Community. It's offered by Reverend Sherman Logan Jr. of the First Unitarian Church in Richmond, Virginia.
Good morning, my friends. I bring you greetings from my home in Sandston, Virginia. I want to thank my friend and colleague, Reverend Davids, and the members of the mainline Unitarian Church for inviting me to share with you for a few moments this morning. And while we are meeting virtually, it is still so good to be with all of you this morning. We have all heard the expression, the beloved community. The expression was first coined in the early 20th century by American philosopher and theologian Josiah Ross. And it is a popular phrase heard in many progressive faith circles, emphasizing radical inclusion, fully liberated from the prejudices and discriminations of this broken world. Now imagine that most of us here this morning became aware of the term from the words and teaching of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You see, Dr. King first spoke of the beloved community in the year 1956 at the start of the Montgomery bus boycott. He envisioned the beloved community as a society based on justice, equal opportunity, and most importantly, love for our fellow human beings. Poverty, hunger, homelessness will not be tolerated because international standards of human decency will not allow it to happen. Racism and all forms of discrimination, bigotry, and prejudices will be replaced by an all-inclusive spirit of humanhood. In the beloved community, Dr. King imagined that international disputes would be resolved by peaceful conflict resolution and reconciliation of adversaries. Love and trust would triumph over fear and hatred. Peace and justice would prevail over war and military conflict. Dr. King also believed that the oppressed and many persons of goodwill will have much to say about how slowly or how quickly the beloved community would be actualized. He understood that this idea would require a radical transformation of values leading to the emphasis on love and justice. And more importantly, Dr. King believed that in the United States, that beloved community would require a radically restructured society. This would mean raising fundamental questions about a capitalistic economic system that places favors over the wants of the few above the basic needs of many. This is true today as it was 60 years ago. Now, my friends, despite Dr. King's lofty aspiration, he didn't believe that the realization of the beloved community would just one day automatically come to fruition. Rather, he saw it as a noble ideal that must first be envisioned and then visibly and eternally work towards achieving the goal. It was this hope that in every succeeding generation, visionary people would commit their lives and resources to achieving such a beloved community. Dr. King hoped that future generations would continue to work towards building a community, and there are many people today who have taken the mantle and are working tirelessly to make Dr. King's dreams of the beloved community become a reality. Our Unitarian Universalist covenant calls us to hold urgent and dear our aspiration to building the beloved community with diversity, inclusion, equity, compassionate justice, and an acknowledgement of our interdependence with other forms of life. But friends, despite the aspirations of many in our faith community to build the community that Dr. King envisioned for many folks in our country, especially our siblings of color and those from marginalized and oppressed community, it is sad to say that Dr. King's dream of a beloved community has become for some an unfulfilled dream. We all know that racism and bigotry still exist. Our schools in many underserved neighborhoods are underfunded. There are folks in the upper 1% are still reaping the benefits and wealth and privilege as poverty level in our country continue to grow. Our country has endured years of racial violence, and we live in a country where there's environmental destruction, corporate greed, polarization, political discord, and to add insult to injury, we are still dealing with the Delta variant, which has thrown a monkey wrench for our desire as a country to return to some sense of normalcy. The January 6th insurrection in our nation capital this year was an emphatic exclamation point on what has been years of political, racial, ideological tension, animosity, and division. And typically in moments of chaos and destruction, that comes an opportunity for rebirth or re-reckoning on how a community can rebuild, reimagine, and start anew. In this moment, the possibility for rebirth has obvious implications. And more importantly, the burning question for us this morning is, where do we go from here? Well, I believe that the key to realizing Dr. King's vision of the beloved community is to build a nation where neither punishment nor privilege is attached to one race, skin color, nationality, gender identity, sexual orientation, or any human differences. And while this represents a very high bar, it must become a community.
Will you leave me some vinegar?
No. Sorry.
Okay.
Is it even attainable? You know, we've been building it for over 60 years. And friends, in my humble opinion, we aren't even close to the beloved community that Dr. King envisioned. You see, the beloved community that I imagine is a place where the phrase welcoming congregation is not just a slogan, but a place where we love each other for our uniqueness, despite our differences and through our disagreement. It is a community where we find comfort in our common humanity and construction new bridges to meet each other when our communication breaks down. This is a community where we stand up for each other and have each other back. A place where we defend each other. We are in solidarity together, where there's a space for compassion, forgiveness, and grace for all of us. In the beloved community that I imagine is a place where no one is left out, no one is more powerful than the others. We all are treated equally and equitably. Now, I don't know about you, but that's the beloved community that I imagine. So why do you think after 60 years, we are still aspiring to build the beloved community instead of living it? Dr. King envisioned that in the beloved community, there would be no racism, prejudices, and bigotry. But we all know that this is not happening in the world we are living in today. We all know the work of dismantling racism is wearisome, and we have made our best attempt at it through the years. And we keep falling back into our old habits and produce partial results. So what would it look like if we took the time to have a serious discussion about the root causes of racism? In our anti-racism efforts, if we think all we need to do to dismantle racism is simple as putting different people in a room together and have a kumbaya moment, it's no wonder why it seems like we're not getting any place. If we just have white people to say that they are sorry for their racist behavior, and that will stop racism, well, tell me, how is that working for you? If we think because we're elected a black man president of the United States and a woman of color as vice president in the last 12 years, we are now living in a post-racial society and things are good, where were you during the last 4 years? But my friends, course corrections and amendment do not dismantle racism, because they are only trying to make correction on top of a foundation that remains corrupt. We cannot change the actual foundation of racism, which was created as a justification for the guardian of white supremacy to secure the economic prosperity through possessions of native lands and enslavement of Africans. These actions were sanctioned by the government and encoded in our nation DNA. We continue to viciously circle each other around this toxic reality because we have never had a meaningful dialogue of who the framers of the Constitution were talking about when they wrote, "We the people." Now, they certainly weren't talking about people who look like me. The racial landscape in our country has changed since the Constitution was written, but racism in the United States has not changed. The civil rights movement started 60 years ago, yet our solution to dismantling racism has largely remained unchanged. We are trying to use a framework from 50 years ago to address 2021 racism. And my friends, it is sad to say it's not working. So it's the time to have a relevant and contextual solution to address the root causes of racism. You see, racism is not just a black and white issue, yet if the majority of our anti-racism conversation is focused on a black and white framework, this means we are leaving a lot of people from joining the conversation. So in a reimagined beloved community, our discussion about racism must also examine how racism affects our natives, our Middle Easterners, our Asian and Latinx siblings. A reimagined beloved community that will require us to have a new vision. We need to build a reimagined beloved community for our mutual liberation and our personal work of healing and progress, supported by networks of allies, elders, and mentors. We need to enter the community with the intention of deep listening to the unlovely others with open agreements that we will try to see the divine in every person. We need to invite those to the table who do not have our same political ideology, who are not in our socially economic classes or have the same educational level, and invite those who do not think like us or get their news from the same sources as we do to join us at the table. We cannot have the beloved community until there is transformation, justice, liberation, and love for all. A reimagined beloved community is a place of inclusiveness, both economically and socially, where all people can share in the earth bounty in a society in which the society products is shared more equally than it is in today's world. A place where we can address the system that causes the underlying economic inequality in our society that affect our siblings who live in Appalachia, as well as our siblings who live in the underserved rural and urban areas of our country. We need to address the real economic challenges brought about generational poverty and address this health crisis emanating from the global pandemic of COVID-19. We need to close the educational attainment gap between our youth of color and our white youth. We need to create a beloved community in which we all are embraced and no one is discriminated against. So friends, how can we reimagine the beloved community for the 21st century? Well, we do not live in that world yet, but we are working our way towards it, one person at a time, one action at a time, one stage at a time. And we are taking care of each other on the way. Friends, this is hard work. Does it mean we do not try? Absolutely not. We do try. We keep doing the work. And we must be willing to do the hard work of building the reimagined beloved community. We need to talk to each other. We need to open our ears and mind and listen. Listen to the similarities and differences and embrace them. Dr. King reminded us over 60 years ago that the beloved community will not just one day come to fruition. And it was his hope that in every succeeding generation, visionary people will commit their lives and resources to achieving such a community. A community centered on justice, equality, and love of one fellow human beings. And as a faith community, we must strive in our work, our thoughts and deeds and efforts to create a reimagined beloved community of the 21st century, where economic, racial, and social justice are the pillars. Friends, Dr. King devoted his life to creating the beloved community. By doing so, he showed us the path to a society that maximizes empathy, compassion, and love. Now, I might not realize Dr. King's dreams in my lifetime, but my hope is that one day, when my 5 little grandchildren grow up, the beloved community will no longer be an aspiration, a hope, or a dream, but a reality. My hope is when they grow up, America will have successfully dealt with the unresolved issues of class and race. My hope is when they grow up, all structures that promote or allow racism or any form of discrimination will be eradicated, eliminated, and eviscerated from our society. My question to you this morning as I close, what are we willing to do to make a reimagined, beloved community become a reality? May this be so.
I'm sure this church all supports Reverend Logan's vision of a loving community. There are 3 components left in our service today: the postlude, a benediction, and a recessional. I offer this because I believe following the postlude would be our opportunity to thank Lori, as I know you and I would both wish to do, for her kindness today and her performance. For following the benediction, we will be, after the postlude, don't be hurt. And thank you for coming. Following the benediction, I will ask you all to exit this room and then the building with me and Eileen as we are going to recognize the reasonable COVID safety standards. So we will not be, as we typically do, staying here and chatting. We'll go out and join coffee. And for all of you watching at home, that will be your cue to quickly get in the car and come join us for coffee. For now, let us enjoy our postlude, Fantasy by Telemat. Our benediction today is borrowed from Reverend Rebecca Parker. Choose to bless the world. No matter how weak or frightened we may feel, each has gifts that make a difference in the world. In this coming week, may you do at least one thing to support the broken, to welcome the stranger, to celebrate what is worthy, and do the work of justice and love. All of us in this community, I know, and it feels so good to give. Let us now go forth from this sanctuary together as we enjoy our recessional music.
I don't either.
Guy there.
They're all muted. No, we're not muted anymore, are we?
No, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Hooray!
That must sound.
Yeah, but we were muted again. Or somebody muted.
No, we're not. Just click your own on and you'll unmute.
Right.
I hope
There's no-
everybody's okay from the storm. It's horrendous.
Yeah. Our garage